about that. I think relationships are wonderful. My friend even said the other time that she thinks I'm a better person when I'm in a relationship.
None of them are going to.
Oh,
I don't think I'm probably dead as far as they're concerned. I'm joking. I wouldn't go that far. But
because every relationship is a lesson, and every relationship teaches you about yourself. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out in these past relationships, as I said, that I fell in love with. What was the point of that? But maybe. Hi, it's Sips.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? I am Bonga, and you're listening to and watching
the Unintentional podcast. And today we're rolling with Noxolo Mahlaba. Welcome. Thank you for coming onto the show. Noxolo has been a guest of ours before, and we spoke about her organization, Bloom SA, and now she's here to talk about African spirituality. But before we get into that, I just wanted to take a moment that, July is Nelson Mandela Day. We celebrate Nelson Mandela Day on the 18th. And obviously, we also celebrate his values and what he stood for. And I think that also ties in a bit with Bloom SA, helping other people. Can you tell us a bit about Bloom SA and, since we last spoke, and have there been any new things that you guys have been up to?
Okay, hi everyone, and thank you for inviting me. I'm Noxolo Mahlaba. I'm the founder of Bloom SA. Basically, Bloom SA is a community development organization that focuses greatly on youth. The aim is to basically address the social ills that we face within our context. We work a lot with township environments, and so we use indigenous resilience to address that, because we feel it's a holistic approach at basically helping people to retake initiative, reclaim their identities and have awareness, which I think is a very, very important factor in anything that we do. And so it then trickles down to so many other aspects of a person's life that then helps them to be able to apply those to everything that they face. Yeah.
Okay, and can you tell us a bit about what current programs or things you're working on at the moment?
Okay, so we basically separate our activities into quarters, and we've done an activity in the first quarter, which was under our outreach program, where we did a clothing drive, and in this second quarter we want to do something under blooming in brotherhood. So that's the focus for this quarter.
Blooming in brotherhood.
Blooming in brotherhood. It's basically an initiative where we basically look at gender-based violence by addressing through basically teaching gender equality from a young age for men. That's how we look at it with regards to the Blooming in Brotherhood, because we've got two programs that address gender-based violence. It's Blooming in Brotherhood and Blooming in Sisterhood. With Blooming in Sisterhood, we address it through women empowerment, because we find that a lot of women who find themselves in those situations are basically disempowered. So, and then with men, we educate on gender equality. Yeah,
I think that's important. I like that, you look at both sides and you speak to both sides, because I think women have also been placed in a position where they find themselves, as you said, in those kind of situations where they have to kind of rely on men, and men have, take advantage sometimes of that situation, and that's GBV basically.
Yeah, definitely. And it's important to look at both sides, because I think then it would leave a gap if we just focus on the one side and then we don't get to hear the other side, what's going on there, and unpack all of that so that we can then get to the core of the problem. Yeah.
And who are there any collaborators that you are collaborating with as far as other organizations or persons, individuals, for these different initiatives, especially the last two you mentioned, Blooming in Sisterhood and Blooming in Brotherhood?
Okay, so when we plan events, we do invite other organizations to be a part of what we are doing. And previously, for the Blooming in Brotherhood event that we had, which I think was last year sometime, basically we called a group of men to come together and to basically create a safe space for them to talk about, men's issues. And we had invited, I can't seem to recall the names, but we did have a couple of organizations that were present, representatives that were present within that event, and we actually had you as well.
Yes.
You were actually a part of that. So we do invite others to be a part of what we're doing.
Awesome.
And how old is the organization now?
So we started it in 2020 November. It was a COVID baby.
A lot of COVID babies are blooming now.
Yeah. So I think for me, basically, it had been a 20-year plan of mine to create an organization that would address community problems within my community, because I grew up in a township, and I feel I was fortunate to be able to go to like a multiracial school, and come out of the township and then come back into it, and get to see the different issues and challenges that the township faces. And there's a lot of good also in that space. It's not all bad. There's a sense of community and all of that. And I grew up with all of that. But, just seeing those challenges, something in me grew that I wanted to do something about that, one day. And so when COVID came and we were sitting at home and we had so much time to our hands, it felt like the perfect opportunity to start to take steps towards building this. And that's how it came about.
And how has it been so far? Like, have you found that in Pietermaritzburg, has there been a lot of support from other businesses towards the organization?
Definitely. I think when we started, we felt very fortunate, and we received such a warm welcome, and the response was just basically amazing. It was beyond what we expected, and in that time we were even fortunate to do an interview with a lady from Belgium who had seen our work through our social media platforms, and basically I guess it grew interest in her, and she contacted us, and we spoke. We did an interview with her, and so I think for us, we had not expected that at all, and we were able to do that, and it really felt amazing. But I think the challenge that we continuously face is to create balance because I do still have a 9 to 5 job, and also with my team.
Yes.
The organization is currently unfunded, so it becomes very difficult to retain a team.
Okay.
And so those are the challenges that we face, in terms of really being able to move forward in the way that we wish. So we become very constrained sometimes because of those issues, but we are constantly moving, constantly working, and trying to address them as best as we can. Yeah.
Well, I think that as you said, she saw through your social media. I think the power of social media has become so great and has such a far reach. Hopefully someone watching out there in this interview will address your challenges and help you out as well.
Yeah, that would be really, really amazing.
And also I have to give props to your team as well, because I think for the event that you guys did on Indigenous resilience last year, or the year before last, the people that the caliber of people you worked with were some of the most talented, in my view. I mean, the graphics of your posters, you even did episodes on YouTube where you discussed certain topics with your partner, and also read stories and so on. Like the quality of all of that, the as a package, the social media, the visuals on YouTube, and the organizing of the events and bringing together just various people, even performers and the like, all of that obviously has to be given props, and that's probably what drew people's attention to the organization, including getting yourself to a place where you now have an opportunity to interview someone from overseas. So I can only imagine, because it's been a year. How many years? 2 years now, since 2022.
We're on the 4th year.
4th year, so I beg your pardon. So imagine the growth really that you guys can go through. So can actually forge ahead. From this point. So props to you guys, I guess, and all the best with the organization moving forward. My goodness,
Thank you.
And now for the topic of the day, African spirituality. Can you tell us what is African spirituality?
Okay, so I think African spirituality basically is a set of values, that people then tend to organize their lives around, and I think at the very center of African spirituality is the notion of Ubuntu, and there's always this sense of collective being, within African spirituality, and community is very, very important, so I think that is in its broad sense. It also involves respect for elders, respect for one another, and and just and also basically respect to the environment, and relating to that in a very deep sort of way, and and also I think at the very center also of Ubuntu is a sense of, I don't know how to put it, but what I'm trying to say is that it basically teaches us to see the God in each of us, and then to see beyond just what you see on the surface, but to be able to see one another from that deep sense, beyond judgments, beyond whatever ideas we may formulate in our own heads about a particular person, but to see beyond that and to see the God in one another, and
And how did you get into African spirituality?
So for me, I think it came from wanting to I think I've always been a very spiritually inclined person growing up, and it probably comes from my introverted nature and my constant search for grounding and, you know, being aware and being intentional about how I go about doing things. And so I also grew up in a very Christian family where Christianity was a very important part of how we lived. And over time it ended up in me being something that I wanted to experience on a personal level, not just something that's being taught at home, but to have my own meaning of it, you know, to understand God for myself. And so that's how it grew. And as I remember specifically when I had my first awakening with regards to African spirituality, I had a thing in me that said I wanted to be able to experience connecting to my ancestors directly, you know, because we know if you practice African spirituality at home, you know that whenever you have to connect to the ancestors, an elder has to do it. You know, they have to initiate that process. And so I wanted to, you know, go I wanted to just go directly and not go through that, and not have to go through that process, you know, because I think, again, I was trying to find meaning of it for myself, you know, and so I started doing research, and it was amazing what I came across, you know, and basically I've never looked back from there.
And how was the response or reaction from your family and your community when you started, or now that you're practicing it like fully?
So I think for me, one thing that has always been a part of me is to I'm very, I can be very bold in a sense in doing or practicing things that I feel very passionate about, you know, and that feel right. And so I never shy away from just doing that boldly, because for me it has so much meaning, and I can never shun that. Also, I can't ignore it when it's there. I literally have to go in that direction, because if I don't, then it's like I neglect myself, you know, and I can never ever do that. That's just who I am. I I don't do anything for others. You know, I won't do it because others are doing it. I won't do it because it has to be right for me as well. So for me, then, in my family, I ended up having to take that very bold step to say, actually, this doesn't work for me anymore, you know. It doesn't make sense to me, and, you know, this is what makes sense. And I invited them to that narrative. I spoke about it openly, first to my mom, because it was easier. Obviously with my granny, was much older, and, you know, obviously these values are very they like a very deep part of her. It's very difficult to then just come and say, I don't want to go to church anymore. You know. But I also had to make them understand that it was not saying that I no longer have regard for God, or I no longer, you know, I just experience God differently. And I've realized that actually God is within me. I do not have to go and seek God outside of me. It's about being in touch with the God inside of myself, and practicing that constantly. And I can't I can't ignore that. I can't carry on doing things like this because that is what has been taught in this home, and all of that. And I think, and one thing I actually asked my mom is, you know, what is more important to her? Is it more important that I go to church because they go to church, or is it more important that I make good decisions, I treat people well, I do, you know, I'm aware of what I'm doing and intentional about my own growth and my own progression in life, and I have respect at home for them and myself. And I think ultimately I can love, you know, and, you know, so for me it's like, what is the purpose of going to church also? You know, so is it in line with those values that I'm already practicing, or is it now it's like the cherry on top that I now have to still go to church? So yeah, that's what I asked her. And I think parents, though, will always, because of their own beliefs and what they feel is right, they will constantly still want you to do things that way. But I think they just came to accept it over time, because they could see that I was still, I think going to church should probably make you a wise person. And I think I still practiced a lot of wisdom in the way that I do things. And so it became, I think I can say, easier for them to accept my newfound reality and way of doing things, which no longer matched theirs. Yeah.
So if you are practicing African spirituality, can it not be like coexistent with Christianity?
You know, I think it's very interesting that you asked that, because one thing that African spirituality is that it's very both and, you know, meaning that it's accepting to other ways of being, which is very different from Christianity, because in Christianity you are taught that this is God, this is the way to follow God. There are a set of rules set that you have to do things this way, you know, and so there's a very clearly defined way of experiencing God. And it also says that this is the way, this is the truth, and it becomes like the only way. You know, so it's like when you're Christian, you just have to completely and embody the Christian way of being, and nothing else, which I think is very limiting. Yeah.
Okay. And what sort of, you know, daily rituals or practices can one start to do if they have an interest in, you know, beginning their own spiritual journey? I know it's a really individual thing, but I'm sure there are some basic things that, you know, you can say, it's okay now that I want to start doing it. What can I do?
Okay. I think it's definitely very personal, you know, and like I said at the beginning, one of the very main principles of African spirituality is the notion of Ubuntu. And so being aware of that and checking how you know, how aligned you are with, you know, a sense of community in the way that you live, you know, and not not setting yourself apart or like living in a vacuum, but constantly being in touch with others, and not not moving away from society, you know. And I think that's one of the easy and readily available ways that you can practice that. And I think also when it comes to, like what I said in the beginning, for myself, I wanted to experience connecting to my ancestors directly. So I found that you can do that by lighting a candle, and just you begin to call on your lineage, you know. You call on the ones that are your guides, or the ones that are close to you, like starting from your surname. So, you know, within your surname, there is Tarazelo, there is, you know, like the basically the family tree, and you know within your family who, when was alive, was good, and was practicing good values, and had good interests for you, for the family, and you call upon those, because those are the good spirits within your family. So doing that and inviting them to guide your steps, and to come to you through dreams, and, you know, speak to you, and constantly guide you and direct your path. So those are some of the things that you can do. And for me, I've also always practiced journaling, which is a very, very powerful way of of bringing awareness to the way that you go about life, because it teaches you to be intentional, and to also be very in touch with you. And nothing, basically, when you follow that, you will always win, because you are just practicing you, and no one can do you better than you.
That's
And
true.
so it's about constantly being in touch with that. And when you do that, you can never be in competition, you can never be, because you are just doing you, and no one can do it better than you.
And also, like, there's no comparison to another person. It's basically you comparing yourself to you, and how you can improve in your own life. That's very interesting. But in terms of, you know, having maybe some sort of a gathering or community within the African spirituality, where can one find that?
So in my journey of African spirituality, I also ended up finding or realizing the need to start that sort of thing. You know, so I have a business. It's called Nguni Serenity and Luxury, which basically aims to connect young people with their heritage, you know, and to celebrate that in very innovative and in ways that are appealing to the young person now, and how they live life. Because constantly African spirituality, or our culture, is constantly made to appear very dark, you know. And I think that's the mentality that a lot of young people hold about it. And so for me, it's trying to bring that awareness through things that they can actually connect with, making it appealing to them, so that they start to have questions and to be curious and to learn more about it. And I started when I started it, I started with I introduced the Serenity basket, which involves, it has candles, it has a journal, it has a journaling pen as well, it has these oils, what do you call them? Okay, it has diffuser oils. Yeah, it has diffuser oils, and it has a mat basically, which is then allows you to start your own what you call your own you know, when you have to call upon your ancestors, you have to create a space that will be welcoming for that type of thing. And so your own altar, you know, so it has a mat also that you can lay, and then you put your candles over it. And it also, and I was also, when I was creating that, I was also very mindful of including the 4 elements of nature, which is earth, air, water, and earth, air, water, fire. Yes. So your candles are your fire. Your diffuser oils can easily be your air, but also with your fire, the candles, also the smoke can be your air as well. And then you include earth elements as well. For that, I also had salt, which basically is a very important way of cleansing your aura, and also that comes from the earth. And then also your water. I can't remember what my water was, but you know, I've got all of those elements within that. And that's also one thing that you always have to be mindful of when you connect to your ancestors. You have to include those 4 elements, because those are the 4 elements of creation. And so when you practice that, you want to be aligned with that energy of creation, because you are creating a path for yourself. You are basically creating a path for yourself, and you inviting your guides to be a part of that.
And how can one get or order these baskets from you?
By getting in touch with me, and interestingly, also the winter season is the perfect time for creation, because that is when we go into darkness, and that is how we create. Is the best, it's the most fertile ground for us to create new ideas. We are indoors a lot, you know. Winter, the cold weather forces us to be indoors, and also just cosmically, it's the perfect time to create, to start new projects. You jot down your ideas, and this is the time where you nurture those things, and you also mentally, it also allows us to think very clearly, which is very different from like your summer seasons, and you know, where the energy is totally different. But in the winter season, the energy is very allowing for new ideas, for, you know, deep thought, and all of that. So this is the time where we nurture new projects. We jot those ideas down. We start to create intentions for ourselves, and when the spring season comes, which is the following season after this, that's then where we we start to bring those ideas into the light, because also the sun comes back to our hemisphere, and that's when, and the sun basically is our, nothing can survive without the sun. Basically, the sun is what we need for everything that we see right now in our world, and everything that is alive is because of the sun, the energy of the sun. But also we cannot allow the sun to govern alone. So we need balance, and that's why we have the moon, because the moon then controls how much sun we get. If the sun were to govern by itself, then everything would end up dying instead of living. So the moon helps to create that balance. And in African spirituality, we call that the masculine and feminine energies. And so we constantly have to invite those energies into our everyday lives.
Okay.
And as a married woman, a mother of a home, what is African, or how do you practice African spirituality as a family, as a wife, as husband, and so on? Or is it, because a lot of what you've spoken about lately is that it's mostly individualistic in a way. It's not really a bigger community, or so how does that work in the family environment?
So one of the very important things about African spirituality, is knowledge and spreading knowledge. So for me, that is my beginning point within my family, because obviously, like I say, it's a very personal journey, and you cannot impose it upon someone else because it makes sense to you. And that is not the way of spirituality anyway. So it has to make sense to them, for them to fully welcome it and practice it for themselves. So for me, it's just a constant responsibility to share knowledge and to ignite curiosity within them, so that they search for themselves, and then create meaning. But I think, I can see progress. I can see progress because there are things that you can identify, that a person is no longer doing the way that they were doing before, or they have a new understanding of things, and I appreciate that. I recognize that growth, and all I can do is constantly hold their hands and just share as much as I can, and then they make the choice for themselves. Yeah.
No, thank you for that.
Okay. Okay. And speaking of that, I'm reminded also of one of my newly found favorite quotes, which says, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." And so I just constantly try to be the example, and leaving it to them to make the choice of which direction they want to go.
Okay. And besides, you mentioned also that in the initial stages of you wanting to fulfill your curiosity, and you did some research as well. What did your research include? Was it reading? Was it speaking to people? And if they were, if it was through speaking to people, are you still involved with them as far as practices and learning certain things from them about African spirituality?
So I think one thing you will find very interesting when you are on any inquiry is that things unfold for themselves. The moment you start, everything then just unfolds from there. And you constantly just have to flow, to be in a state of flow with where the journey is leading you. And that's what happened, you know. I just started searching, and everything just flew from there. There was a constant flow. Being introduced to people as well. There's also another saying that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so that's how it happens. And it won't happen the same way for everyone. Sometimes, for me, you also start to see things very differently. And when something is not just, it didn't just come to your path coincidentally, but it has a deeper meaning. You just know it. So I started having a lot of that, and I knew that this was the way, and I just constantly was in flow, and allowing the journey to lead me where it needs to. But it's not perfect, we're human. And so you constantly have to practice awareness, because only in stillness can you really receive those sort of messages and be able to really know what resonates deeper, rather than what is just presented. And you won't always get it right. Sometimes you'll get it wrong, but you will learn from that.
And where do you kind of see yourself in your journey in the future, or what kind of things would you like to see happening in terms of African spirituality?
I think I mentioned this in the previous interview, that my journey of African spirituality has led me to just spirituality, and that's a very personal journey, but I wouldn't have gotten here without starting there. So it does help to unlock your own path, and I think that's what spirituality should do for a person. It should not just be about following a set of rules and basically replacing the old doctrination with the new one, but basically following your own inner wisdom. And so I've moved away from the African spirituality and to just spirituality, as a universal principle.
Okay.
No, interesting stuff. No, that's all I have on my side.
Naomi, I think I'm done for this day. Thank you so much for journeying with us and sharing, your experience. I think people, as you call it, awareness, I think it's better to have awareness and just to be cognizant of other things that are out there and that you can use on your own journeys. So I think it's important that people actually know that there is alternatives and different ways of doing things.
And also I have to also give you props for representing your way of life in the best possible way. That because one thing many people have, or perceptions that people might have when they hear the term spirituality or African spirituality, is a certain type of clothing, someone who's weird, who goes off into a corner and just you don't really see them during the day or at night. It's so many people practice spirituality broadly in a modern way, if you know what I mean, like in the sense of walking in the street, you can't say you can't identify someone as to whether or not they practice spirituality or not. It's they what's the word, they fit in the environment. They blend. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
They blend very well, and it's not a matter of like they're always wearing well, I don't know what they call those things, like who I forgot some of the names of these people who practiced African spirituality in the stricter sense and also dressed for the part. But now it's more modern. So the point I'm making is it's somewhat refreshing to see that it's not something people should be afraid of. If they are so inclined to following that, because there are people who are just like you and me in terms of how we dress, how we interact with people and so on, who practice spirituality as such. So that's my takeaway from all this, in the sense that you've represented yourself very well. Not to say that I'm any authority on who should represent themselves in any way, shape or form, but I thought I should just give you props on that. And thank you for taking the time for sharing this information with us. I learned a lot. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and the information and the knowledge.
Thank you very much. And I think it comes back to the whole thing of spirituality, African spirituality being very both and so welcoming to other ways of being. And if you next time you see me, if you see me in Ibai, don't be shocked. Because that's still a part of me. It's a part of being African. And then the next time you see me, I'm just a modern person, as you say, dressed in a very modern way. Then that's also a part of me. There's no right or wrong way about it. It's about what resonates with you.
Powerful.
Thank you so much for joining us, and all the best with your journey and Blue Messiah as well.
Thank you so much.
And with that, I would like to leave you with a quote from Nelson Mandela that says, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is the difference that we have made to the lives of others." Thank you.
Beautiful.
Nice and short and sweet. I think for me, this has taught me a lot as well. I think going forward, I would like to have a dating space, because I feel like in my past I've just jumped into relationships. And if you have any questions, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, let me ask the usual question.
Sure, go ahead.
Are you guys seriously dating?
Yes, I'm joking. I'm joking. No. It's a good one though. No, we're not.